The Pulse of Spokane is a broad show that showcases many different things in our community, sponsored by Local 29 Firefighters Union, Well Dressed Walrus, and Homes for You. Well, welcome to the Pulse of Spokane. Kent Adams here. It's Wednesday, the 17th of June. My gosh, we're more than halfway through the month. Where's the month going? And then we're not but 3 weeks away, I think, from celebrating Independence Day. A vacation. We can spend more time at home. Oh, we've done that for a couple months. Anyway, I've got a couple of great guests here today, and it's, I think, going to be an interesting conversation. Lance Kissler, that we were just talking about, I've known for 6 or 7 years, but I still invited him back. Slip of... Huh?
That's on you.
Yeah, that's on me. Yeah. He's chair of the City of Spokane's Human Rights Commission. What a title. That's even longer than the title you have out at Eastern. Pretty close, yes. Yeah. And then Kurtis Robinson, my first time to meet Kurtis, president of the Spokane chapter of the NAACP. Those two gentlemen and myself back right after this.
I'm former Washington State Representative Leonard Christian, and since I left office, the budget has almost doubled, and the governor signed comprehensive K-12 sex education into law. He's also abused his emergency powers. I'm asking for your support to help me return to Olympia so that I can protect businesses and families. I'm Leonard Christian, the reasonable right candidate, and I ask for your vote.
Paid for by Leonard Christian for State Representative, Republican.
Here at River Ridge Hardware, we want to help you help your fathers and grandfathers. How many times have you seen them get a bigger workout just trying to get the equipment started? They crank, and never get started. We have a battery operated. You just throw that battery in, run it, pull the trigger, you're ready to roll. No workout, all fun, getting the garden done. Here at River Ridge Hardware, we want to help you make your dad's day and your grandfather's day. Neighbors helping neighbors at River Ridge Hardware.
Well, welcome back. I'm pleased to have Lance and Kurtis here. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Oh, it's a little rainy outside, but
is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
June seems to just have flown
June?
by. Yeah. Well, I think we're still in extended April.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of what it feels like weather-wise.
And I was going to say, I can tell you, it's good not to be marching. It's good to be sitting for a minute. So.
Okay. Great. Yes. You've seen my office when you walk by. No windows. You've seen the studio here. No windows. I never know unless I go to the front door what it's like outside. So that's why I was asking. So, gentlemen, in your role of the Commission, Human Rights Commission, NAACP president, there's been discussion on several things recently. I don't know if you've noticed, but we've had some protests. Black Lives Matter. We've had some rioting by not the protesters, basically, but other folks who
fringe elements. Right?
It is the fringe. We've got that on both sides of the political side. Okay, Ozzy, our sheriff, and I have talked about that a lot. That they tend on either side to ruin it for the rest of us who would naturally sit down and have a conversation like today. But I can't imagine those folks on either side having a conversation. We know from experience that some that have even run for office don't want to have that conversation, okay? Which I think is terrible. I don't care which side you're on. You need to talk to people and put your views out there. And that's what we try to do on this program. So there's a lot going on. Last night, the City Council, Spokane City Council, postponed the old contract that was coming through. I think it's been something like 3 years. There has been discussion. We've seen it on TV way too often. Brutal things happening with police officers and primarily black folks. I don't think that represents the police departments as a whole. In fact, a few folks that I know we hate that more than anybody else. But like everything else, you get painted with the broad brush, unfortunately, and that really is unfortunate, because I've learned that when you sit down and talk to people, you find that there's so much more you agree on than you disagree on, right?
Yep.
So let's tackle, if we can, a little bit about the police contract. And I think the NAACP was coming out to say hold off for a while, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fill me in, because I didn't follow that in the last day or two like everybody, and I know you have. Where are we on that, and why would you want to hold that off?
Well, from where we sit, there's several pieces of it that are, pretty problematic, and the most important piece that we're zeroing in on is how it tries to, at least from our perspective, kind of box in the office of the ombudsman.
Okay.
Because
so that's kind of where the focus point is right now, for the most part.
For the most part,
Yeah.
And that's what we're zeroing in on, and because the community voted on that. And we voted for a broad brush and a broad platform for this individual to operate from, or that office to operate from, that without independent of the police department. Yet time and time again, through the collective bargaining and some other issues,
that comes back in.
Yeah, and so they keep trying to, and it's like, this shouldn't even be part of the negotiation. This is its own separate thing. It has the right to be autonomous and independent of law enforcement, so it can help keep them in check.
Well, even if it's in the contract, isn't it essentially null and void because it was passed by the voters?
You would think so, but that's not how it's been panning out.
Contract
Really?
is a legal document.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Okay.
That's so I can't, and I don't have a law background, but certainly I think that's one of the concerns out there, is that you have a collective bargaining agreement that's a legal contract.
Okay.
But then you also have an initiative that was passed,
Which means more court time and expense for everybody
Yes.
concerned.
and uncertainty, and that's not going to help anyone.
No.
Right.
Yeah, and when we're looking at what law enforcement really is set up to do, right, is to serve the community, right?
Yes.
And the community has spoken on saying how they want to be served.
Right.
And this is the expectation. I mean, it's been...
Therefore, it should be in the contract, not something that counters it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So it's going back for what? Negotiations, or for review, or what happens next?
Well, I don't know, Lance, do you have an inside word?
I don't know, to tell
Okay.
you the truth. That's a process that the commission hasn't been involved in, and probably should be. With our role to advise city council as well as the administration
Right.
on policies and programs and issues, I think, would be a natural body for them to engage in this process. Right. Unfortunately, our commission typically is off to the side in matters, and isn't always engaged.
I wonder how
proactively.
much of that right now, though, with everything going on, is kind of just an oversight rather than a specific.
I'm actually gonna say it's been year over year. It has been that way. So we have learned of various positions that have been moved forward that revolve around civil rights or diversity, equity, and inclusion, areas that would tie closely to us. And we find out about them after they've been created, after they've been positioned or posted, or even after they've
And
been
you would be the
hired.
natural group to go to
Exactly.
to check it out and
Yes.
and so forth.
Yes.
Why don't you mention for a second the commission and what the basic responsibilities, because I'm not sure everybody knows.
Sure.
I'm not sure I do. So if you can.
So it was established in 1992.
Okay.
And it's kind of waxed and waned in terms of the amount of influence and purview that it's had over
Okay.
that time. As it stands today, we are simply an advisory commission.
Okay.
So our role is to specifically advise city council, although we also advise the city administration. So
Okay.
our commissioners are appointed by the mayor's office and
Okay.
then confirmed by city
Confirmed by
council.
council, right?
We're all volunteers. We do not have dedicated staff. We are actually loaned, is the word I would use, less than part-time, maybe
Yeah.
a few hours per month, a legislative aid from one of the city council members.
Okay.
So that's the extent of our...
So you're added on to their other responsibilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So certainly by the nature of the structure that is set up,
Right.
we're not always engaged like we could be.
Right.
Right. But I think there's also the other side of it, which is the intentionality behind doing so. And I met with our mayor, Nadine Woodward, at the beginning of the year and had a great conversation to get us started. Then, of course, COVID happened. A lot of things changed. We've had a lot happen over the past few weeks. So
Right.
certainly understand that we are in these times that are very difficult for us to really be thinking about engaging one another proactively and really collaborating. I think that what I want to make sure is known is that our commission is here and ready to serve and engage as much as we can. So I have been reaching out to city leadership about certain topics.
Okay.
And hopefully as we, engage more and more, we'll start to become more brought into the fold and can do our role to really provide that advice. Because in a case like this with the contract, I think that the Human Rights Commission would have some perspective
You would
to
think so.
provide.
You would think so, right. Talk to me about the NAACP that you are president of, and what you look at. I want our audience to understand both organizations here a little bit more. We all have perceived views of everything, right? Until we sit down and learn about them. So tell me about your role, and more importantly, though, the NAACP. What are you focusing on?
So we're a branch and we're not a chapter, so that's a kind of an important distinction.
Okay.
So the Spokane branch of the NAACP is its own kind of like standalone organization, as well as all the branches are, but we're under several hierarchies of the national structure as well. So it goes national, regional, state area conference, and then all of the branches.
Okay.
And so the Spokane branch is basically Eastern Washington, because hey, there's not like anybody else hanging around here, right? So we're here
Well,
too.
I'm going to guess you might not have too many members in little towns that have 12 people.
Right.
I mean, anything.
I can speak on behalf of
I
grew up in one, so.
But the membership is growing, so
Good.
it's been real interesting. It's been a challenging time, and we've really seen a great community response as far as not only individuals from some of the outlining areas, but people as a general saying, "Hey, this is unacceptable. We want to be a part of this. What can we do?"
Right.
And so we're making sure to gather as much collaboration and communication to continue to challenge the things that the NAACP stands for here locally and nationally, which is the civil rights for all communities, but more specifically for our communities of color, and making sure that we're doing cross-system collaboration as well as, meaningful, sustainable action in achieving those goals.
Wow.
And we've got a particular goal that we're working on.
Talk about that right now.
So we back in December, the commission unanimously voted to establish an exploratory task force.
Okay.
Comprised of several commission members as well as community members, and intentionally we brought on more community members than commission members.
Okay.
The task force charge is to determine what is the viability, the desirability, the feasibility of an Office of Civil Rights.
Okay.
Of the city actually establishing a department within its administrative structure that would focus on civil rights. Right now we have, I believe it's Title 18, which establishes non-discrimination in terms of public accommodations, housing, employment, some of those things that you would naturally expect. And of course, yesterday's news with the Supreme Court and the ruling about the Civil Rights Act and the LGBT community, that would certainly fall into this area as well. Our commission...
and we're a little more inclusive in Washington State than we are in Idaho, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I think
Those
I heard you say that yesterday.
Yeah. So as I mentioned yesterday, when people were reaching out to me, those protections were already in place locally and at the state level. So we were fortunate for that. But what we don't have a mechanism for is if those incidents do occur, how do they get fielded? How do they get handled? And we actually had one come in over the past few months, and it didn't fit the criteria where it would get sent off to the state, where it gets sent off to a federal area. So it sits in this limbo of who's going to wrestle with this.
So nothing gets done.
So nothing gets done, right? And we have offices throughout the city administration who do receive complaints, but they don't necessarily know what to do with them. And so they've started engaging us, but we don't have that responsibility. Once again, we're an advisory body.
Okay.
Now that's addressing the complaint piece. That's when something happens, right? And that's after the fact.
Right.
What about working on an approach that counters that really goes out and tries to create change within our community so that we don't have those complaints.
Right.
And I think that's where an Office of Civil Rights could have a multifaceted approach. Not only is it handling complaints that come in, and I think Kurtis can speak to the volume that they receive and the types, but also looking at proactive strategies so that we're no longer reactive, but we're responsive and proactive.
And I think that's the important piece, right? So, this is not anything new in our Eastern Washington community. This has been going on here for a long time. The way that the structure from what the talk has been in the community and the NAACP, and when I'm talking community, the POC community about the Office of Civil Rights is not the Office of Civil Rights, but the Human Rights Commission, is that it's set up, even though it carries that title, it's set up to basically restrict itself.
Oh, okay.
And that's part of the problem. So when we're looking at the oppressive dynamics that have occurred here over a sustained period of time for almost forever, right? We're also dealing with, hey, go here and you'll get your problem solved over here. And, that's not really occurring here. And so our organization, especially since I came in 2016 as a criminal justice chair for the NAACP, the first thing that smacked me right in the face was just the overwhelmingly large amount of civil rights complaints, legal redress issues is what we call them, that was backlogged. And,
really?
Oh, yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, and Lance and I talked about maybe bringing a stack of that over here, and it just didn't seem like the prudent thing to do.
There's not enough table space for it.
I mean, and it's a startling thing, it's a sad thing, but it's a real thing. And so part of what we've been making sure, and especially when the NAACP fired off last year about the need for the Office of Civil Rights based on the issues that had happened here, especially at Morningstar Baptist Church and those flyers that were pulled up, it was like it is really time for this to happen. And it's time for this not just to be things where people can go and, okay, you can send your complaint over here and we'll try to get to it as much as we can because, hey, we're a whole bunch of volunteers and we don't really have time or capacity, but we'll do what we can. Yeah. And that's what we're really calling for, is that there is an authoritative body here that is able to not only follow through on these, channel them where they need to go, but also deal with enforcement dynamics.
I'm going to take a quick break, but I just was thinking, because I want to continue this discussion. It's very interesting. One of the questions I'm going to raise to you is, why isn't there a combined effort that does give you your efforts? And I raise that from the thinking of sometimes we need less government and maybe more effective government than just creating additional bodies out there. And then I want you to Kurtis, to talk about some examples of, you mentioned the stack, because I think I'd like to learn, and I think our viewers would too, about, you don't have to mention names or things like that, but real world things that are going on out there. We often get filtered by the media and others, or we don't hear about it until there's a brouhaha going on, and we're kind of at that stage now. Let's get the facts out, okay? We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back right after this.
When we opened the doors the first day, we started with a counter full of maybe a dozen selections of a dozen cupcakes. We sold out, and it just went crazy from there. I'm Sally. I run Sweet Frosting's Blissful Bake Shop in downtown Spokane. It's almost 40 years of baking for me. We now do between 1,000 and 2,000 cupcakes a day. The variety of cupcakes is kind of like the variety of services that STCU provides for us. Since we opened this site in 2014, they've been our banker. We are producing for 4 stores right here, so we have 35 to 40 employees at any one time. There's an STCU close to virtually every one of my stores, and every time I get a new employee, that's the first place we send them. STCU is such a good fit. It's just so convenient for me to have them as neighbors. They are always so pleasant and always so helpful, and we have a lot of little needs. They've always been behind me 100%, so it's a good thing to have that partnership.
Here at River Ridge Hardware, we carry a great selection of Krylon brand spray paints, Color Master, general purpose, the Rust Protector for taking care of metal, Fusion for taking care of plastics, and the Super Max that can take care of it all.
Welcome back, Lance and Kurtis. Thank you for sticking around because this is an important topic. One of the things I raised before we went to break was the Human Rights Commission, which is all volunteers, and you get a little staff here and there, an hour or two, maybe a month, and so forth. And the Civil Rights Commission or office, okay.
Yeah.
And my question was, why not combine? And I say that from the feeling of, how many more departments do we need, and the costs and so forth as a taxpayer? And I think it's a very legitimate question, but why not, to my obvious point of combining? I'm sure there's an answer.
If I could take that and pass it.
Go for it.
Yeah.
So, from where we sit as the NAACP, because of the amount of complaints that we get, and we get everything from, what's happening in the school system
Yes.
to people complaining about their treatment at the Spokane Transit Authority to private business, so it's just across the spectrum. We get complaints from the prison system.
Okay.
And so it's a very, very...
So you're talking about once a month or once a year?
Well, I'm talking about once a week.
Really?
several
Okay.
times a week.
Okay. See, that's what I want.
yeah.
That helps, I think, paint the picture of what's going on.
And so
I don't know that many people know that.
Right, and in the middle of all this stuff that's been going on with the George Floyd protests and Breonna Rollins, I think it was, that we were still fielding complaints. And so there's been this constant juggling match, and it ebbs and flows. But when we're talking about passing this on, and I'm going to pass this on to Lance, that what we need is a body to actually capture all this. So when organizations like ours get these complaints,
And deal with it.
right, and yes, and resolve them.
Okay.
Right, because it's such a broad spectrum, because it speaks to the historic systemic oppression that's been occurring here under the radar of most of our population.
Yeah.
And it absolutely will take a collective perspective to deal with that.
So, to your question about, I think the question is, do you take the commission and this office and combine it so that we have? So, I don't want to create a structure that perhaps isn't the most effective before we work through our entire report, because we are working on a report which includes conducting research, looking at other models out there.
Okay.
However, what I could envision at this point is you have an office that is staffed. I don't know how many staff people that is. However, the commission would serve in that role that is advisory to them, or in a perhaps oversees that area. So similar to how you have a parks department and the parks board. So you already have those structures that are set up elsewhere throughout the city.
Okay.
I would see essentially the two areas combining together in that type of a relationship, right? There are positions. So there was a position that was hired within, I believe it's an HR analyst role. There's a position that was posted for, and they are in the process of hiring for a manager of diversity and inclusion, or equity and inclusion initiatives, and that reports to city council.
Okay.
I've had administrators within the city reach out to me about positions that they would like to hire. So what I'm seeing is there's these efforts that are happening here and there.
And at some point, maybe.
What if we were to really take a holistic, centralized approach?
Right.
Because I think that would probably be even more effective, which would also reduce tax dollar burden and so on, right? Like, let's use our taxpayers' dollars
Wisely.
wisely,
Absolutely.
while accomplishing what needs to happen.
Right, wisely and effectively.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's a model that I would think would probably come forward as a recommendation.
And
but I don't want to get ahead of the research.
When do you expect that to come? Tomorrow?
I wish. So once again, what you do have is
Depends on whether we have to march again or not.
is a volunteer group
Yeah.
of commissioners who if we want to meet,
Well, you only work 20 hours a day and you're chairman.
right? Yes,
Come on.
Yes. But if we do want to meet as a commission, it's an open public meeting.
Okay.
We have to give, 24 or
Yeah.
whatever, however much advance notice. And so this task force was created as a way for us to get that work done, I don't want to say outside of the process, but within the process where we aren't limited to certain restraints around,
yes.
how
Well, it's still
quickly
going
we
to come
can
back
move.
to the whole group and be discussed and everything else. It's not
Exactly.
like
Absolutely,
you're,
yeah.
you're hiding it.
Yes. Unfortunately, what you also have there is you have a lot of highly engaged people. I'm speaking to Kurtis himself, among others, who, we're working to get the work done, but we also only have so much, hours in the day and so on. We're all volunteers. So I think our goal is to have something formal by the end of this year.
Okay.
It would be great if we could get something sooner. I think what we're looking for at this point is to connect with several city leaders to talk about the process
Okay.
and ask them the questions. What would you like to see from us? What would be helpful? What can we do to make sure that this is efficient and that what we're presenting to you is what you need to make an informed decision? So then that way we're not wasting anybody's time. We're setting expectations, and we maybe have an understanding moving forward that yes, this might have some. Hopefully, will have some viability to it, right? Because otherwise, we're just going to be sitting there turning the wheels.
Yeah, and no one wants that.
And no one
Right,
wants
and if I can, there's a reason that office has not been implemented yet.
Okay.
Within the system that we're currently existing as Eastern Washington, and even with the amount of complaints that have been starkly evident since I came aboard the Spokane NAACP, it's still not existing. And so we really have to ask the question: why is that?
Yeah.
What is it about our perspectives? What is it about our system that is not making something like this that is so glaringly evident to anybody that has the bandwidth or desire to look into it with any kind of sincerity or clarity, that this is still an ongoing subject matter today in light of the national conversation and the local reality?
Right. I asked for an example. I'm going to have to postpone that just because of our time limit. But I'm going to ask the two of you to come back and let's continue this conversation maybe in a few weeks or a month and update where things are going.
Maybe even hopefully after we've been able to have a meeting with city leadership,
Absolutely.
we can come back with
Did you have one other thing you
information.
wanted to bring up?
Well, I just wanted to share that we did issue a statement. We shared it with the commission did with our city leadership about how this office could play a role in the current situation that we're in with the protests, riots, looting, what's happening with the conversations that are happening in the community. And this is not to limit the role of the Office of Civil Rights, but to give an example of how it could play a part and be effective. Working with police on de-escalation tactics, working with protesters, the organizing groups, and all those different stakeholders, ensuring that people are safe. They're not the ones to go out and necessarily be out in the streets, but perhaps there are things that this office could do to really help ensure that our community is safe while still being heard.
Well, the number one thing always is education.
Yeah.
to
And that
tell
goes
the
back
story out
to
there.
outreach and
Okay.
education
Right.
component. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
You
you.
keep in touch?
Will do, sir.
Okay, I know he will, because
Yes.
I get an email or a text from him every so often, although I think recently I had to nudge you.
You did.
Yeah.
You did. Yeah.
we had a great program last week. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it.
No, sir.
With Scott Finney. Do you know Scott?
I do.
Okay. Fantastic person. Just absolutely enjoyed the conversation. One of my best conversations I've had this year. Okay. He's going to I'm talking to him this afternoon at 2:30. He's going to begin to host a program here.
Excellent.
Okay, because we hit it off, and we talked personally about our backgrounds and everything else, and so I don't know if you had a chance to see it, Kurtis, but go look at it because I
send it
think
to you.
I think you'll enjoy it.
Will do.
I hope so.
Look forward to it.
Thank you to the two of you. We'll be talking. Okay.
Sounds great.
And we'll be talking with you next time on the Pulse of Spokane. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for watching. Ask the host a question, recommend a guest, or check out any of our other programs on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SpokaneTalksMedia.com. Sponsored by Local 29 Firefighters Union, Well Dressed Walrus, and Homes for You.